I just went with a little Upton and Tiger.
On the Klinsmann today at a press conference suggested that the national ties of an Algerian referee could play an adverse role in how the knockout game is officiated against the Americans.
Ooh.
Tell he's a German.
You not play fair.
All right, stand by, guys.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
We haven't really hit that many home runs, but I think we've pieced together some hits when we needed to, especially with runners in scoring position. Good base running. The bullpen's been great. Starting pitch has been great.
I'm sore in other parts of my body that I hadn't exploded like that in a while. So
she said.
Certain parts of my body are feeling it, but definitely not my back.
A couple of the voices from over the weekend, Braves leadoff hitter B.J. Upton and Tiger Woods, who had a short weekend at his tournament there at Congressional. Welcome into Sports Talk as we pop the lid on a new week of Sports Talk commentary. Kevin McCrary holding down the fort alongside Tom Hayes. Phil Kornbluth is on vacation this week. We should point that out. He is not only on vacation, he's taking his first ever cruise. He may or may not make it back. He could be at the bottom of the ocean. Right now, we're not exactly sure. He's completely off the grid. Also in studio today, our guest host this week, our guest co-host, Rickson Lane, former intern. We like to go back to the tree. We're like the Yankees farm system here. We take care of our own. And Rickson Lane joining us in the studio as well. Rickson, good to see you again.
Good to be here, and I got to tell you, as much fun as it was being with Stegman for 3.5 years, this side of the glass, it's nice to be on this side for once.
Now we bring you on this side of the glass. And Pro, he's the fixture on the show. He's really the straw that stirs the drink here on Sports Talk, undoubtedly.
Yeah, it can back up and choke you, too, if you don't watch out. Yeah, there's some interesting voices. I thought Tiger Woods, but, it will be interesting to see if he'll be ready or if he even plays in, I guess, the next big tournament, the British Open. Because some of the exotic shots you have to pull on those courses, I'm not so certain his back can hold up.
I don't think there's any doubt he's going to be playing at the British Open. If anything in between to get ready, every major is important for him to be in his mind because he wants to win the. And you can't win it if you're not in it. And he feels like he's 100% healthy and attributed everything that happened over the weekend to rust. But we're not going to see Tiger Woods a la 1999 ever again. But I do think we can see him compete at a high level if he's healthy and he sharpens his game, and that'll take a little bit of time. So we'll talk about everything that happened over the weekend, everything that is happening this week. A lot of people call these the dog days of summer in terms of Palmetto State sports, but there are always interesting things going on and interesting things to discuss, and we're going to get into a lot of those things this evening, along with your phone calls, emails, and a lot more. We're going to set the table for you coming up. I can tell you we will talk with USC men's soccer coach Mark Burson because we are all jumping on the bandwagon at the World Cup. Kicking and screaming. Corn left the country. He had enough of it, so he literally just left the country. So the one World Cup hater is off the panel now, so you have a bunch of World Cup bandwagoners here that really don't know a lot about international soccer except for every 4 years when the World Cup happens. But Mark Burson does know a thing or two about it. He's got a former player on the squad, and Brad Guzan, so we'll catch up with him in our next hour. A lot of big news. A lot of big news to pass along, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
All right.
Oh, they kind of try to drag North Carolina through the mud.
Well, they bring it on this. They're like, "Oh, we're going to reopen that thing." Isn't that double jeopardy? You can do that. About international soccer, except for now they're going every 4 years into basketball.
So why would
you were able to get the embed in, Graham?
Before you
Lots of time for your phone calls tonight. A good chance for you to get on board. 800-956-7266. Anything that is on your mind, we're here for you. You can get it off your chest. Predictions. Time to start making those predictions. Everybody's undefeated right now. Everybody's perfect during the summer months with their predictions. So you can lay it out there right now. 800-956-7266. You can reach us also via social media at Sports Talk SC if you want to follow along on Twitter or interact with us in 140 characters or less. Doesn't take 140 characters to say we love you. I love you. You guys are great. You can do all that in less than 140 characters, but you can do other things with the characters available to you on Twitter, as many people do. Join the thousands that follow us there. Also, you can keep up with us on Facebook if that is your thing. Sports Talk Radio Network. Go to facebook.com/Sports Talk Radio Network. Our website, updated, available, and up and running 24/7, 365. That is SportsTalkSC.com, where you will not only find stories and links to stories and all sorts of great things that we post throughout the day and night, including recruiting, but a link to listen to the show live. If you're out of our listening range or can't find us on your radio, you can go there and listen to us live right at SportsTalkSC.com. And if you're really brave, and I mean really, really brave, this is not for the faint of heart, but you can scroll down to the bottom of the page, and there is a window at the bottom of the page with a video feed of our show each and every night. And you can watch us live and in color. If you ever wanted to know what Pope looked like behind the glass, you can see him. The professor, Tom Hayes, if you wanted to see what Rickson Lane looks like, you can see him here as he guest hosts with us this week. We're all there. Again, there's not a TV MA on that. The FCC has let us go with just a PG-13. Now, if you have kids under the age of 13, do use discretion, because we're not going to say anything bad, but it can be somewhat traumatizing seeing us for the first time there at SportsTalkSC.com. All right, a lot of things happening, of course, over the weekend. Things went down. We talked about the golf. We talked about the Braves continuing to win. They've won 6 of 8. They're back in first place in the NL East. Mike Morgan will be joining us later this hour, but it's good to see the Braves getting a little bit of traction. Still not really hitting the ball, guys, maybe the way that some people had hoped or do hope that they will do as we move forward, but they're winning, and they beat the Phillies after really struggling against them earlier, so they went to the city of brotherly love and picked up some nice wins. They go back home with the lead on the Nationals, and they're playing the Mets, a team they should beat.
They should beat, but this is the Braves, and especially at home, they have this maddeningly, I guess, habit of taking teams they should beat at home and turning the tables. For instance, this same Philadelphia team, they swept 4 games in Philly. They got swept in 3 games in Atlanta by that same Philadelphia team. So that should tell you.
Yeah.
But Freddie Freeman is starting to hit, and that is the key to that entire lineup. Even when they're struggling, they usually win when Freeman's bat gets hot. And it's warming up right now.
It's the Mets, though. I mean, honestly, trends aside, I mean, watching the New York Mets, I mean, if you can't take a decent series out of them, then you're gonna have problems throughout the year anyway. So, I mean, if Atlanta doesn't get it done this weekend, then they've got bigger issues to worry about.
A chance to make a little hay if you're the Braves, and because the Nationals aren't going away, and they're about to get Bryce Harper back tonight. He'll be back in the lineup, so that'll be a boost for them. And this is the month too that we have to start paying attention to the hot stove. The trade rumors will be circulating. The Braves are never one of those active teams, and we'll get more from Mike when we join him later this hour on potential moves that the Braves might be willing to make. But you got to keep an eye on that. Will the Nationals be making a big move? There's a lot of teams in the National League that the Braves have to be looking at down the road. The Dodgers, the team that bounced them last year, they're starting to put it together finally. They've made it. It's amazing what they've done in the past 2 years, erasing 8-9 game deficits in a blink of an eye. They were down 9 games to the Giants about 6 weeks ago. Now they're tied with the Giants going into this week. So a lot of things happening there. The Brew Crew, Milwaukee, they've got it going right now. They have the best record in baseball. And then, you look at the Nationals, you look at some of these teams that you're going to be running into down the road, and the Braves have to pay attention to what they're doing. I still think the Braves need to try to get some more offense, maybe another big bat in that lineup. They've been able to hodgepodge it with their pitching. They always seem to have good pitching. Despite all the injuries that they've had, they still have been good on the mound the past 2 years, and they have been hit hard, not just this year but last year with pitching. But offensively, I think you go after a big bat if you're Atlanta.
Well, if you're the Braves, you get in that 7th or 8th inning, and you got a lead, you feel comfortable that if you get some middle relief pitching, if you need it, then you get to Kimbrel. That's the bridge is there, and they lost some injuries in their middle relief as well, and that has made them struggle. But I've always said right now for the Braves, and it's not going to happen, is they need a leadoff hitter because
Hey, what's wrong with B.J. Upton? He had a triple yesterday, drove in a couple, had a home run against Houston.
I'm always a proponent of, and maybe I'm old school, of having guys who make pitchers and catchers nervous leading off, that bunt a lot, get on base, threat to steal, so your boppers see more fastballs, and the Braves don't have that. That's why you see just a ton of It looks like an old American League game when you play the Braves because every other pitch is a breaking ball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we'll see what they do as they move forward here closer and closer to the trade deadline. We're almost halfway through the Major League season. Time really flying. All right, coming up, a major national college football pundit has picked Clemson to win the whole thing. Not the ACC, the whole shooting match. We'll tell you about that and give you those takes coming up and more information coming out on Sam Montgomery, the former Greenwood High star NFL player who was arrested for speeding last week. The trooper was suspended with pay late last week after that arrest, and now the dash cam video is out. We'll go through that with you in a very bizarre story. You don't want to miss that. And a significant injury potentially for the USC basketball team, still months away from the season. We'll give you the latest on that. But first, out to the phones, 800-956-7266, as we head out to John in Greenville. He leads things off tonight. Hello, John.
Good evening, guys. How y'all tonight?
Great.
I just want to see on the show before y'all on WRIX, they announced something. I went to the Sports Newsstand to see if it was true, and they announced that in Smith and Street magazine and in Phil Steele's magazine, they announced that those guys are saying that Deshaun Watson will be the starting quarterback for the Georgia game.
Well, they might be hearing something that we're not, and that would be the definite case because I would be willing to bet, sans an injury, my last dollar that is going to be Cole Stout taking the first snap against the Georgia Bulldogs 2 months from today, as a matter of fact, on August 30th, that the Georgia Bulldogs will see Cole Stout. And if Deshaun Watson plays, it'll be a designed series to get him in for a change of pace, or it'll be because Cole Stout is struggling mightily in that game or is injured in that game.
And they're also picking Clemson to go 11-1. They said the only team they're going to lose to is Florida State. I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, the Athlons has Clemson losing 2 games to Georgia, actually 3 games, to Georgia, Florida State, and South Carolina, the big rivals. But as I just mentioned, there are some people out there nationally, not just your run-of-the-mill in-state guys, or, some people favor certain teams over others. Some publications favor certain teams over others. But this latest prediction coming down late last week is from Pete Rozelle. If you follow him on Twitter, it's, I think, coachingsearch.com. He's with 247 Sports. He's a very well-respected guy, has thousands and thousands of followers on Twitter, and has, when he says something, people certainly at least listen. So we'll give you his prediction and his explanation why he thinks Clemson is going to play for the national championship. That defense, I've got to tell you, is going to be, spoiler alert, one of the reasons why. But Deshaun Watson, a true freshman quarterback, starting in between the hedges in game 1, I don't think that is going to be one of the reasons why. And Steve Spurrier's talking again. He talked with Josh Kendall, the state newspaper. Very interesting stuff coming from the head ball coach. Surprise, surprise. We'll tell you about some of that coming up, too.
Stand by.
By the way, in the World Cup today, and right now, Germany and Algeria playing, and it looks like the Germans are going to advance. They're in extra time, and Germany scored right away in extra time, and they lead 1-0 with about 4 minutes left in the extra time. They're 4 out of the 30 minutes. And earlier today, who played earlier today? I'm trying to remember.
It was France and Nigeria.
Oh, yeah, and France won. France advanced. I'll tell you, I know everybody's kind of either you're into the World Cup, you've kind of caught the fever, or you're one of the people that is rolling their eyes every time you hear or see somebody cheering for the World Cup. But, I wasn't watching the Brazil-Chile match over the weekend. I wasn't, but I got one of those ESPN text alerts when I was out doing stuff around the yard, and it said, hey, they're going to PKs. I said, I'm going to go inside and flip it on and watch it. And that was high drama. That was really good stuff. And then Mexico yesterday, it looked like they had it against the Netherlands. They were up 1-0, and they scored 2 on a very controversial PK that they got at the end of regulation there. But that was good stuff too.
Well, what's fascinating about the World Cup, I guess from just a sociological standpoint, is the fact that you look at countries like Germany and Brazil, and they nurture and look for talent athletically for their sports like we do for football. And you almost have to imagine if our best athletes, if we didn't have football, what our soccer teams would look like.
I know it takes more than just a great athlete to play soccer. And I'm not, because I put this out on Twitter this week, and soccer nuts were like, how could you insult soccer players by, just assuming that any great athlete? No, I don't assume that. But I do think if a guy like, let's say, Sammy Watkins, from the time he was 5, was dribbling around a soccer ball, and that's all he did, I think he would be, with his skill set and his speed, probably a pretty good soccer player. Although, one might argue he's great with his hands. You can't use your hands. A lot of people mentioned Davion Clowney when I put it out there. I think he would be good maybe as a keeper with his athleticism and his wingspan. But there are guys out there you wonder, hey, Bruce Ellington, you're telling me Bruce Ellington couldn't have been a star soccer player?
But the fact that the United States doesn't have players like that and doesn't have people like the Ronaldos and the Messis of the world, I think you can make the argument that it helps the U.S. in the way they run their program, and the fact that it's not centered around one guy. You have to be able to play technically sound ball, and you have to be able to defend, and you have to be an all-around player, as opposed to some countries who have that superstar, and it's just sort of, we'll let him do his thing, and you 10 try to stay out of his way. The U.S. doesn't do that, and I think you're seeing, especially in the run they're having in this World Cup, that it helps over the long run because you're building more well-rounded talent as opposed to superstar talent.
And Germany just scored again, as
did
Rickson was making that point. I think the Americans would love to have a guy like Ronaldo, though. Boy, I mean, the ball just comes off his foot different. You really see the difference between those elite class players and just really good. Like Clint Dempsey's a great player, but he's not in the same stratosphere as Ronaldo.
Stand by.
Glad you're with us tonight on Sports Talk. Kevin McCrary, the Professor Tom Hayes with you. Guest co-hosting with us this week, Rickson Lane, former intern Hall of Famer here, hanging out with us this week. Kornblut is on the SS Titanic 2, hoping for a better result on vacation this week, taking a cruise somewhere to the Caribbean, where he hopes to recharge and refresh before the college football season really hits the nitty-gritty. Speaking of the college football season, you've got a lot of pundits making their predictions now, and you take them with a grain of salt by and large. But you do look at some and say, wow, that's interesting. And one of those is from Pete Rozelle from CoachingSearch.com, also 247 Sports. He's predicted Clemson to make the college football playoff, the first year we have a playoff, and not only make it, but win it. He has Clemson, Auburn, UCLA, and Florida State as his 4 teams in the college football playoff. Let me tell you what he says about Clemson and why he picked Clemson. Rozelle says, I watched Clemson in person during the spring, in the spring game weekend, and believe the Tigers have the personnel on the defensive front to beat Georgia, Florida State, and South Carolina. It's an ultra-talented group capable of playing stout run defense and consistently affecting the quarterback. Write these names down: Vic Beasley, Corey Crawford, Shaq Lawson, Grady Jarrett. Of course, when you think of Clemson, you think offense, but the Tiger defense gives Clemson a legitimate shot to earn its first ever earn a spot in the first ever college football playoff. Let's face it, the program took an important step last season by defeating Ohio State in the Orange Bowl, and though they lose Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, quarterback Cole Stout showed that he's certainly capable of running the show during the Tiger spring game. Although Stout will be a first-year starter, he is set to enter his 4th year in Chad Morris' scheme and has accumulated valuable game experience along the way. In addition, Clemson is also solid up front and has a bevy of talent on the perimeter. The marquee games come early and on the road against Georgia and Florida State. Sure, the Seminoles have handled Clemson last season, and don't forget that Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables knows what it takes to beat the Seminoles. Venables was on the defensive staff at Oklahoma when the Sooners defeated Florida State 47-14 in 2010, 23-13 in 2011. In addition, the Tigers have recruited wholeheartedly to Morris' scheme for 3 straight years. At the end of the day, Clemson has a talent, depth, and the head coach to make 2014 a special one. What do you guys think?
I think that if you're making the argument for a team to go to the national championship, you don't want to start it with, well, I watched them in the spring game, and I think that their defense is good enough to beat 2 SEC teams and the defending national champions. I understand what he's saying from a scheduling point of view. They have to be considered just because, the way their schedule works out, it's basically, if you go just on talent, it's a 3-game schedule. You got Georgia at the beginning of the year, Florida State in the middle, and South Carolina at the end. If you go 3-0 in those games and you take care of business in the other 9, then obviously you're right in the thick of things. But I guess my issue with this, those are 3 tough games to win. You're replacing one of the best quarterbacks in school history. Sammy Watkins is gone. You've got some question marks you have to fill, and I'm not sure that the defense, as improved as it may be, is necessarily going to be able to carry you against Georgia, Florida State, and South Carolina. Maybe 2 of the 3, but I'm not sure about all 3.
Yeah. And, I'm with you there, and I think that their schedule has more – there's other landmines on there.
Louisville.
I think Louisville's a landmine on October 11th. I think the game against North Carolina has a trap written on it at home coming after the Florida State game. When you get geeked up to play Florida State, you come home against a North Carolina team that could be dangerous. I think any team that Larry Fedora is on the other sideline has potential to be dangerous, and North Carolina has a lot of problems they're dealing with. We'll talk more about that later, but at Georgia Tech on November 15th, that's always a dangerous game if you're Clemson when you're going down to Atlanta to face Paul Johnson and that kooky triple offense that he runs. But that defense is legit. That defense is what carried them really. We all talk about Taj Boyd and Sammy Watkins, but it was that defense that won a lot of big games for them. It was a defense
Boston
that stepped
College.
up. NC State,
Mm-hmm.
Boston College, the defense stepped up. Ohio State. I mean, Taj Boyd throws a head-scratching interception at the end of that game, and you're going, what in the world? And 3 years ago, that's the death knell for Clemson. The other team goes right down the field and scores. Ohio State is in the end zone, but Stephon Anthony gets right out there and picks the ball off 2 plays later. Clemson wins the game. So I do buy into the aspect that this defense is going to help carry them. But I kind of agree with Ricks in the fact that I don't know if it can carry them for 12 games in the regular season, the ACC championship game, and then 2 games in the postseason without a slip-up.
Well, especially when you lost a lot of talent on offense, and your first 2 big games that Rickson mentioned are both on the road. And of course, Georgia between the hedges, which the Bulldogs looking for revenge. And that is one of the rivalries I think that should be played every year, and is not, because those teams are less than 90 miles apart, is Georgia and Clemson. And they recruit the same players. So, not only are the fans geeked up about this game, but also the players, because they come from the same areas. And I think Georgia's sitting for revenge, hiding between those hedges, waiting to pounce.
Yeah, Georgia was flat out embarrassed against Clemson, and they bounced back. The Gamecocks were on the receiving end of that bounce back, too. Georgia played its best game, in my opinion, the following week, and it didn't surprise me at all. I picked Georgia to win that game for that very reason, but they're going to have that on their mind. All Mark Richt has to do is pop in the tape of last year and show what Clemson did to them. They physically manhandled Georgia on both lines of scrimmage in that game. Let's run out to the phones. Where are we headed next, Pope? Ronnie in North Augusta is up next. I'm sure he completely agrees with this prediction coming down from Pete Rozelle with Clemson winning the national championship. By the way, Ronnie, in his top 10 teams, he does not have South Carolina. 5 through 10, Oregon, Michigan State, Alabama, Oklahoma, Ohio State, and Georgia.
I'm not worried a whole lot about what Pete Rozelle's got to say about that. But let me just, and I know you know how I look at it. I see everything garnet. But let me just throw a few facts at you here. I mean, everybody keeps talking about this Clemson defense. It's going to be lights out. I'll give them credit. Against Lattimore, they stacked the line of scrimmage. They slowed him down probably better than anybody we played. They did the same thing against Mike Davis last year, but both times Connor Shaw either ran wild on them or went up over the top on them and killed them. But, I mean, they're talking about this defense like it's the steel curtain. Let me throw some numbers at you here right quick. Like last year, they gave up 35 points to Georgia, 27 to Maryland, 51 to Florida State, 31 to South Carolina, 35 to Ohio State. That doesn't sound like a defense to me, but it's just going to be lights out and can carry their football team. I mean, yeah, you take the rest of the opponents, and they did a great job against them. And another thing, I mean, I sat here and watched that Clemson Bowl game replay again from the other night. Sammy Watkins, he may be the best college football player I've seen. And he's as good as anybody. But I've seen. They can talk all they want to about this guy. They tell me I know he's an idiot when he starts talking about all the great experience Cole Stout got. Apparently, he don't know who he got that experience against. He hasn't played he might be played 10 meaningful plays since he's been at Clemson. That offense is not going to go up and down the field like they have the last few years. So this defense is going to be on the field a whole lot more than they've been used to being out there. And, I mean, I could prove to be wrong, but I got to see it to believe it. I just do not see why everybody just thinks this defense is going to be lights out, one of the best in the nation. They got to make a whole lot of improvement over what they did last year if they're going to be able to carry this football team.
Well, one of the side stories of this whole equation is who steps up when Vic Beasley gets, and we'll see if the ACC tries it, gets what we can now call the Jadeveon Clowney treatment. When you double and triple team, who's going to step up? Because let's face it, he's going to get it next year.
Ronnie did latch on to something that will be interesting to watch. Chad Morris, it's all about pace, go, go, go. And when you have weapons like Sammy Watkins and Taj Boyd and, you had Andre Ellington, all these, they're moving the ball. But if you're going 3 and out and not moving the ball, that can put your defense out there for extra plays and get tired. Will they go to a little more of a ball control style, up-tempo ball control style for Clemson to take some of the pressure off that defense, give them a blow or two?
I can answer that question for Ronnie. The reason why everybody's supposed to be lights out is because they were so bad for so long that they actually had some decent snaps last year that they looked so much better. But again, 51 points to Florida State. I mean, they are, but I mean that's to Ronnie's point. That doesn't make them one of the best defenses in the country.
More of your phone calls coming up, but it is time for our Braves report with Mike Morgan. Don't look now. Atlanta's starting to put it together. 6 of 8 they have won. They're back on top of the NL East standings, and they're going back home for what, on paper, We know how dangerous things are on paper in baseball, but on paper, a very winnable series against the New York Metropolitans. Mike, everything starting to click a little bit for the Braves right now.
Well, it did on the road trip overall. You take 8 out of 11. You split with the Nationals in that 4-game series. Probably could have taken at least 3 there, but unable to completely win the series. But overall, 8 of 11 on the road. And you look at it, we're now in the second half of the season. And with all the different things that have plagued the Braves through the first 82 games or so, you check the standings, and it's Atlanta, not Washington, in first place by a half a game. Bryce Harper returns for Washington, so that'll add a little bit of drama now in this race that I really think could come down to the wire. But I think that when you're forced to just take a look at the big picture, what you see is, while Atlanta might be a team that has some flaws, they're certainly good enough to compete for a lot of things in the National League this year.
Well, let me pull out one of my Yogi Berra-isms, and I guess that Berra-isms, if you can call it that is 90% of this game is half mental. And be that as it may, what is up with B.J. Upton? You stick him at the top of the lineup, and suddenly he's swinging the bat. Can you see anything different in the way his approach is at the plate since he's been batting leadoff?
Well, I think the tendency when you put a guy in the leadoff spot is that he feels like he needs to focus on making more contact and not strike out as much, and that's really been the case for B.J. Upton. He's still always going to be a strikeout candidate, but he has cut him down, and when he puts the ball in play, better things happen. And when you're in the leadoff spot, you realize you're not there to necessarily hit home runs. Excuse me. So he's not trying to hit home runs the way he normally does, which very often causes him to take a violent swing and come up empty. So, I want more of a sample size. BJ's back in the leadoff spot tonight. I want to see what he can do now for, say, another couple of weeks. And then if that's the case, we'll call this experiment a success. I'm not there yet. He's still hitting in the low 200s, which is not, for me, an ideal spot for a leadoff guy. But I like the other things that Freddie's done with the lineup. Adelton Simmons in the 2-hole tonight. Tommy Listell in the 7-hole. It takes a little bit of pressure off him. And you know how I feel about Jason Hayward. I like Jason Hayward. I just don't like him in the leadoff spot. I think he's a good fit for the 5-hole, and that's where he is again tonight behind Justin Upton.
Well, I know all Braves fans, including yours truly, are holding with bated breath. What's the latest on Evan Gattis?
Right now, no word yet on the MRI. So we're all just kind of waiting. It is correct me if I screw this up here, a rhomboid injury. Basically, it's an upper back injury, and with as violent a swing as we all know Evan Gattis has, it's not surprising that something like this, which is a rare injury overall, if there's one guy it would affect, it's Evan Gattis. There's got to be one of the most naturally strong guys in baseball. So we're all going to have to continue to hold our breath, for at least another day, because as of right now, no MRI results. Christian Bethancourt, the highly touted prospect who's been in AAA most of this year, will get his second career start tonight.
And Alex Wood on the mound for the Braves. I know you've been big on him, and he seems to be settling right back in now that he's a starter again and not coming out of the bullpen.
Yeah, I never really was in favor of him going through all the things he's gone through, into the bullpen, which I know he's not a fan of, and then you got to go back to being stretched out, so you had to go back to AAA. I think Alex Wood can be one of the more consistent guys in this rotation. Quite frankly, maybe more consistent than some of the other guys like Santana, who they were leaning on earlier in the year, and Aaron Harang, who I'm still a little bit gun-shy on. So I think Alex Wood is going to be there to stay, and I think you'll see him put together a good outing tonight against a Mets team that, let's face it, is overmatched overall.
Mike, we appreciate it. We'll catch up with you tomorrow night.
Okay.
That's our Braves Report with Mike Morgan, brought to you by Whit Suber of Home Shop Realty, where you pay less for more. Call 803-518-3888. And as we mentioned, the Braves now back on top of the NL East standings by a half game over the Washington Nationals as they begin a series tonight in Turner Field against the Mets, and the Nationals are off tonight. So the Braves can actually, the Nationals play tonight, don't they?
I think they do.
Yeah, they have to, because they are. They're playing Colorado. Yeah, they're playing Colorado. I knew they were playing because they've been beating that Bryce Harper drum all day. They're excited to have Bryce Harper back. He hit 3 home runs and a rehab start, and I think they said, okay, he's ready. 3 home runs and a rehab start. Let's get him up here to the big league club. Yeah, they're playing Colorado in D.C. tonight. Let's take it back out to the people and head to Florence. Billy's on the line. Hello, Billy.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
Hope you're well.
Y'all do such a fine job even with Corn Blues out. Really do. Pro, K-Mac, everyone does such a fine job. I'm calling to back up Pete Rozelle. I'm not totally agreeing with him now about winning it all. I do see some gaps in there, but where I do agree, and like I said there before, there's a perception Clemson's offense is going to take a major hit, and there's no Sammy Watkins. I get that. That's it. Taj Boyd, there again, falls in the category of being fool's gold. The reason I say that is because you probably heard of Dwayne Allen, which is towards ACL. Andrew Luck actually called him one of his best weapons, if not his best weapons at the Colts.
Very good tight end.
Nuke Hopkins, of course, Sammy, Andre Ellington, which is actually, from my understanding, starting at the Arizona Cardinals with Carson Palmer now, had just a phenomenal year. And trust me, Chad Morris will get it done. I'm assuming this is probably Chad Morris's last year. He'll have running backs. He's got a great running back class coming in. Dabo does. You've seen Clemson's recruiting. It's pretty elite right now. And I think Robbie Caldwell can do good with the offensive line, and I think it's just going to be a very productive offense, and I think Cole will not make mistakes. I think he's going to get it to the guys he needs to get it to, and I think it was Pro that might have mentioned that you might go to a more ball control because there is a lot of running backs, and you've also got Sharon Peake and Mike Williams, and very talented, in my opinion, the most talented tight end in the ACC, which is Jordan Leggett out of Florida, runs like a deer. And the defense, I'll back this up real quick because I know you guys have other callers. I'll back Pete Rozelle's comments out. The defense is called depth. And Mackenzie Alexander, if you haven't heard of him, he's a 5-star. Dabo was just wanting to get him in big time. He had a growing issue last year. He's probably 2 and done. He's out of Florida. ESPN had him as the 7th overall player in the country. He's going to be at that. He's pretty much earned a starting job. Jerron Curse, Travis Blanks. That's the secondary, and right now Cordell Tankersley, and that's as far as the defensive line and linebacking core. I do think this defense is going to be special because I think and I'm not going just off of 4- and 5-star ratings. I just think that it's so talented and deep that you're going to rotate in defensive tackles and defensive or linebackers in, and it will wear that interior line on the offense for the opposing team out.
I don't think there's any doubt Clemson's going to have, going into the season, at least on paper, their best defense, their most depth defensively that they probably had since the early 90s.
Let me tell you the best test case you're going to get for that D is week 1 when you see the best running back in America truck about 15 of them. That kid is a 19-star, is what he is. We'll see how they stack up down in the hedges week 1. I'm trying to stop that kid. Well, he stopped himself. Why not having Aaron Murray? That is going to be an addition by subtraction because they will hand him the ball next year. Well, they'll go away from him to commit, yeah, of course. But either way, even if they commit, he's that good. Just hand him the ball anyways. You saw what he did to USC last year. The old Doug Draybacks. That Malika. Although I could probably see a rapper or two wearing that in a video. Actually, I'm going to look one up right now for you, Pro, see if I can find you one on eBay. Apparently they wore the jerseys last year, bro. Yeah, the hat's just a .5S or .45S. I guess they stopped short of putting a massive revolver on the front of the hat. Not that I'd be opposed to anything of the sort. Come on, I mean, the Cyclones? Water. Ricks, are you too young for Captain Planet? That's a great intro. I'm gonna get you that intro because that just I'll play it in the next break for you. You're gonna love it.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
We've got the Professor Tom Hayes in the studio, Graham Pope behind the glass, Kevin McCrary here. Guest hosting this week, our guest co-host, Rickson Lane. You remember him. He's been around, part of the Sports Talk family for a long time. Now he's all grown up. He's out of school. He's engaged. You're just doing all the big boy things now. You're just crossing them all off your list at once.
Growing up, I don't like it.
All growing up. That's what happens. I told you to stay young as long as you can. That was my only piece of advice. No Corn. He's on vacation on the SS Corntanic, cruising the high seas right now, and I'm sure that maritime law will probably prohibit him from making any recruiting calls, which is going to be very difficult for Kornblut. I tried to explain to him you're really off the grid when you're on those cruise ships. You're not going to be just jumping on the internet without paying a lot of money or pulling out your cell phone and calling somebody. We do have some recruiting notes that we'll pass along. We are going to do our best in his stead to keep you abreast of everything that's happening recruiting, and we'll do that. But I know it's going to be very difficult for Corn over the next 7 days.
The best story, the legendary story, is about Kornblut disturbing reporters in the press box at Rosenblatt Stadium during the College World Series, making football recruiting calls.
I'm pretty sure as his wife was giving birth to their children, he was making recruiting calls in between, holding her hand and telling her to push, asking a kid his top three. That's the way it goes.
There's a school of really talented swordfish that I know he's had his eye on for the past day, so they'll be putting in a top 5 of them pretty soon.
He's hitting the buffet right now, I'm sure. He's making a nonstop cycle to the buffet on the cruise ship. We've got some comments from Steve Spurrier. He did a Q&A with Josh Kendall of the state newspaper, and Steve Spurrier never disappoints. He had some very interesting things to say, including his thoughts on how important it is to win an SEC championship. I thought that was very intriguing. So that's coming up as well. We've got Mark Burson, USC men's soccer coach, joining us in our next segment. The World Cup fever continues. Will it continue beyond tomorrow? The United States continuing its trek of opponents with ties to our world wars. Belgium up next. Not the Battle of the Bulge, but the battle to see who goes to the quarterfinals. Not going to be easy for the United States. Brad Guzan, former Gamecock keeper, is the backup keeper for the United States men's national team. Last week, we talked a lot about Clint Dempsey, who, of course, is the captain of the United States squad, former Furman Paladin. It's amazing the ties that we've had in men's soccer on a national and international level with guys that have ties to our state. We talk about the great football we have in our state, the great baseball, but the great golf, but maybe overlooked is some of the great talent that we produced in our soccer programs, from Furman to South Carolina. Coastal Carolina has a heck of a soccer program. We are very fortunate. Heck, Lundy down at the College of Charleston has put together some great programs as well. We're going to talk some soccer with Mark Burson coming up.
Your powers combined, I am Captain Planet! Captain Planet, he's our hero. Gonna take pollution down to zero. He's our powers magnified, and he's fighting on the planet side. Captain Planet, he's our hero. Gonna take pollution down to zero. Gonna
So
I know you're a big ticket guy. Here's Matt Joyce, the DH, and he checks. It's in there for a strike. Should say that Aaron Boone has already gotten on Ted Barrett before the game even started. When Barrett walked by him to go to home plate, third base umpire, Aaron had already jumped him. Here's the 0-1.
Yeah, I'm down here talking smack to the ump.
Back to your phone calls momentarily. Want to go out to the guest line and welcome in legendary USC men's soccer coach Mark Burson, one of a handful, just an elite number of Division I soccer coaches that have won over 400 matches. And he joins us now. He's obviously put out some great talent over the years at South Carolina, and I did not know this stat. In each of the past 4 World Cups, a former Mark Burson player has been on the United States men's national team. That's a heck of a stat right there, Coach.
Well, thank you very much. You know, it's an honor, and it's very, humbling, and it's just a great feeling to just have had a little bit of a part in it.
Yeah, of course, Brad Guzan on the men's national team. He's the backup keeper, but boy, he came to you as a highly touted freshman, and I know you knew he was destined for big things. Are you at all surprised at where he is right now?
No, not at all. And I can tell you his teammates here from South Carolina would tell you the same thing. I mean, he was just an outstanding player. And his freshman and his sophomore year, and then actually he was drafted after his sophomore year and was the number 2 pick overall in the MLS draft. He was the highest goalkeeper ever picked in the MLS draft. And, he's a great guy. He's a great competitor. And the United States is so fortunate to have him as his number 2 as our number 2 goalkeeper, because really he'd be a number 1 anywhere else in the world, really.
The World Cup, I know you have always been an advocate and kind of an ambassador for soccer, and at times in this country, that's probably been a pretty tough sell. Have you been amazed, like a lot of people, at the outpouring of support and interest in this World Cup? I don't know if it's because of social media or what, but I mean, it is on a different level than I've ever seen it. Bars are packed to the gills with people not watching just the Americans, but the World Cup in general. What is that like for you to see this kind of enthusiasm around the World Cup?
Well, you bring up a great point, but it's been coming. This is not a one-time phenomenon. This has been building through the years. The number of youth players across the country has been burgeoning. I mean, the game's just grown tremendously. Not only on the men's side, on the women's side, our fans at South Carolina, our crowds at South Carolina have been absolutely outstanding. And that's because all of our students at the university have now grown up with the game. They want to come and see what the soccer team looks like at South Carolina, as well as the baseball team and the football team. So the sport is totally mainstream, but I think what's really hit is the generation now of 18 to 29-year-olds, as well as their parents, have all grown up with the game. So, everybody's into it. Everybody knows what they're watching. They appreciate what they're watching at a high level. And also the World Cup has been exciting, and the United States has done well. So all those things have sort of triangulated into hit at the same time.
Coach, there's been talk from World Cup analysts with the United States making this run into out-of-group play that the U.S. is now a country that is going to be around in the World Cup for a while, that's no longer going to be a country that teams can take lightly. And kind of going off what you just said about the 18 to 29 generation that's grown up with soccer, do you think that's a true statement that the United States is now going to be a country that teams not only have to face but have to prepare for and to worry about in World Cup play moving forward?
Well, absolutely. Now, this year, we did not qualify for the World Cup in the under-17s. But prior to that, there were only 2 teams in the world that qualified for every single under-17 World Cup, and that was the United States and Brazil. So our young players are coming up through the ranks and really doing a great job. I think it's just fantastic to see, and I think that there's no question that the sport is secure as far as its growth in this country, but now I really think it's mainstream. I think when you see, as you have over the last 6 months in the top 10 plays on ESPN, there's always a soccer play in there. I think it's great to see. It's just a wonderful, great thing to see soccer taking its place in this country right along next to the others. And there's no question that our national team now is a legitimate contender. I don't think we're ready to win it yet. I don't think we quite have that depth. We don't quite have that level of player, but it's beginning to build.
We were sitting here sometimes just pipe dreaming, Coach, about some of our best athletes playing, maybe a Jadeveon Clowney being in the net, that sort of thing. But, just getting on the occasion to ask about this is the fact that, we see in our high schools and even in Pee Wee leagues, kids being nurtured about the gridiron, about football, and then they grow into the sport. And then we look at countries like Germany and Brazil and how they just scrounge for talent as young as 9, 10, 11 years old. Comparatively speaking, the developmental aspect of the talent for soccer here in America as compared to Brazil and Germany, where would you think it stacks up?
Well, first of all, we have a tremendous advantage over a lot of these countries because of 2 things. The first thing is the size of our country and the diversity of our country. We have so many diverse populations in our country, so many different nationalities, so many different groups that have grown up with the game, and we're a giant nation. And we have really good facilities. So these are things that we all have going for us. What we also have, though, is an awful lot of kids that play a lot of different sports. So, years ago, if you would walk in and ask the University of South Carolina football team, how many of you guys played youth soccer? There wouldn't be very many. But if you went in there now and said, how many of you guys, when you were little, played youth soccer? You'd be amazed at the number of guys, student athletes here in a lot of our sports that played soccer, growing up. So, we've got kids playing, we've got kids, really good athletes playing, and in the end, we'll get our fair share. The soccer athlete is a little bit different than the football athlete. You certainly do think, wow, how could we be if our forwards were LeBron James and Kobe Bryant, and we had Jadeveon in the back, and maybe Tim Duncan in goal, and maybe Adrian Peterson was our right back, and, the former Ray Lewis was our left back. I mean, you kind of run a little crazy thinking about things like that sometimes, but in the end, the soccer athlete is a little different guy, like Lionel Messi is a little guy. He's not going to look like LeBron James or these guys. So we're developing our soccer athletes as well. And, on the men's side and on the women's side, soccer is here to stay. And, boy, this U.S. team, just getting out of that group, had to compete against teams of heritage in this game. Portugal and Germany, that's 2 great teams, and Ghana. I think Ghana had 9 guys out of their 11 that played in the Champions League, if I'm not mistaken. So, those were really great teams. We got out, and we're finding our way. We're finding our way, and we're establishing soccer as a fan base in the mainstream and as a competitive team. You know what? We've done well. This isn't just the current. I mean, this is the second time we've made it out of the group, right? The last World Cup we made it out of the group. So, it's not like we've been bumbling and stumbling before this, but I just think more people recognize it now.
Clint Dempsey said they can advance. Do you believe him?
Oh yeah. There's no question. I think this will be a real even game. I think Belgium is really underrated. They are a very, very talented team. right down the spine. You know, they've got, you know, major world players down the spine in goal, at center back, center midfield, up front, and that they're going to be really, really tough. But you know what? If we can close them down as we did Germany, if we can get off to a good start, I really think that's the key. We got to get off to a good start.
Coach Burson, we appreciate it. Mark Burson, USC men's soccer coach, breaking down the World Cup, USA Belgium tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, they got number 5 stars. They're going to beat the whole SEC this year, man. They're got a returning power forward and Sindarius Thornwell. And loving you is wrong. Stand by.
Yeah, we're still 2 months away from the college football season, several months away from the start of the college basketball season, but already Frank Martin could be dealing with a significant injury to one of his freshman players, 6'6" forward, Shamik Shepard out of Brooklyn, New York, tweaked his knee. We found out about that last week from Frank Martin. They are now very nervous that it could be an ACL injury. Martin said today on an SEC conference call they'll find out tomorrow and confirm it one way or another. If it's an ACL, that could be his season. They'd have to redshirt him. And very bad news if you're South Carolina. Shepard averaged 17 points and 11 rebounds and 2 assists per game in one season at Fishburne Military in Virginia before signing with South Carolina, of course, a native of Brooklyn. Tough news for Frank Martin. And this week, on Wednesday, he'll find out about James Thompson, his incoming player out of Baton Rouge, another big man that is dealing with the legal issue stemming from an arrest on an alleged assault with his girlfriend.
And, of course, obviously they have to find out if it's torn. If that's the worst-case scenario, the best-case scenario is just a sprain, and he just needs to rest it. That would be a key. But South Carolina has not been the luckiest team with big men, or I should say front court players. Dominique Archie's knee injury before, when they got about 2 or 3 games into the season. Orlando Howell toward the latter part of his career-ending injury. So if you're a big man or a front court player at South Carolina, just have a rabbit's foot in your pocket or in your shorts or something, because they have had bad luck with guys playing in the front court.
And the big men is really what South Carolina need right now, because you've got guys on the wing and at the point, with Dwayne Notice and Sindarius Thornwell. I mean, you're really kind of set on the perimeter, including when you throw in DeMarcus Blanton and Marcus Strayton coming in. You've got guys on the perimeter, but it's the interior that South Carolina kind of needs to take that next step. And the Kaichinis and Hakevicius are coming along, but you would love to be able to shore up the interior, and losing Shepard for the year is not something that would make Frank Martin happy in his efforts to kind of bring some more depth to the interior.
That's what they really needed last year, is depth, some guys to come in there and clean up and take some of the pressure off some of those other guys. And Shepard was one of the guys they thought could do that, and James Thompson's another. And they still could have them both this season, but it's looking very suspect for both for various reasons.
And of course, Carrera, that plays a big man's game, had the hip flexor or the hip injury the year before. So another time you get a front court player. The most interesting thing about basketball recruiting that shocks me is how guys either slip through the cracks or they come out of nowhere or you don't notice them. Dwayne Notice, for instance. As soon as you see him walk on the court, the first time I saw him, I said, this guy has an NBA body already. I said, how did he pass through so many teams and end up here? I mean, it's just incredible how so much talent is out there. And then you see the way teams like Wichita State is building, and then you see some of the talent names you never heard of on any top 100. But suddenly, these guys can play ball.
The NCAA is back in Chapel Hill, and Steve Spurrier's expectations in the SEC. Those stories coming up.
What will they find this time? Bum, 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 bum. Here's Rashard McCants available. You guys never took Phantom 101? I was the master of attending Phantom classes. I was a Phantom student. Yeah, he was great. He'd be an ideal Santa Claus during the holidays. Jolly as hell. That's exactly what he said. Man, you let me talk soccer, I'll go all night. Yeah, he's a really good guy.
Let's catch you up on a few things here and get into this North Carolina NCAA investigation and comments that Steve Spurrier made. But first, the College of Charleston and USC both with players on Baseball America's freshman All-America team. The Cougars with 2 players, only Miami is the only other team to accomplish that feat, and the 2 Cougars on the first team. First baseman Nick Pappas, who is from Dutch Fork. I believe he is a Dutch Fork product, and Bailey Ober. They're both on the first team. Pappas, 269 this season, 5 home runs, 26 RBI. Ober, 10-3 with a 1.52 ERA. USC starting pitcher Will Crow made the second team, 8-3 record, 2.75 ERA this season. Crow also was on the collegiate baseball freshman All-America team earlier this month. And a bizarre story. Do I want to get to the bizarre, the state trooper Sam Montgomery story, or do I want to do the North Carolina thing first? We'll do the North Carolina thing first, and we'll get back to this very bizarre case in Lawrence County involving former Greenwood standout Sam Montgomery and also current NFL Cincinnati Bengal Sam Montgomery, who was arrested for speeding and maybe being an NFL player. That combo apparently lands you in the clink in Lawrence County, depending on who pulls you over. But I actually have the dash cam video, a portion of that audio that we'll play for you. So I'll hold that story and get into the to this story with North Carolina, guys. I want to get your thoughts on this with the NCAA making it official that they are now reopening the case in Chapel Hill against North Carolina, that academic scandal that rocked the Tar Heels in 2011, 2012. The NCAA came in there, said no rules were broken, left town, and then more has come up since. The university had hired a former federal prosecutor to take a look at things, and some other stuff came out. And then, of course, we had Rashad McCants last month saying that he never went to class. Grades were changed for him. The Raleigh News and Observer has chimed in saying in 2005 there were maybe up to 5 players that were enrolled in no-show classes to stay eligible. So this is a big stinking mess that is now bled over from the football program under Butch Davis that ended up costing him his job in North Carolina, a little setback with their program that they're still trying to recover from. Now is going into the coveted basketball turf, Roy Williams. And again, if this exact same story was coming out of Lexington, Kentucky right now, the country would be reacting completely differently. The fact that it's North Carolina men's basketball and it's Roy Williams, nobody seems to be really coming down real hard on him yet. But what do you guys think is going to come of this?
Well, it's going to be difficult. I tell you what was the name of that book talking about the big banks during the recession, too big to fail?
Mm-hmm.
We've had some of those. I think the old lingo would have said sacred cows, teams you don't mess with: Southern California, Notre Dame, Penn State, North Carolina in basketball. Remember initially when this story came out, they were careful to say, oh, well, this involves only the Tar Heel football team.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's in the basketball, and this is treading in the sacred ground. Now, this will be interesting how this is handled, but I will tell you, the NCAA, because it's North Carolina, because it's the Atlantic Coast Conference, the now big conglomerate Atlantic Coast Conference in basketball, they're going to treat this with kid gloves. It'll be interesting how they treat this.
And especially, I think, in wake of how badly they botched the Miami situation,
Yes.
They'll be careful with how they proceed with North Carolina. What I can't understand is the school admitted over a 5-year period there were 54 classes where there were various problems, whether it was grade changing, whether it was not a real class, the class didn't really exist, various things that were going on. The school forwarded all that information to the NCAA and said, this is what we have found that was going on. And I don't understand how the NCAA takes that information, 54 classes in 5 years that had different problems, and say, we've concluded that North Carolina didn't do anything wrong. North Carolina is saying North Carolina did something wrong.
Yeah. I was surprised and in 2011 and 2012 when the NCAA wrapped up its first investigation that nothing came of it. I mean, Butch Davis's nanny was tutoring players on his team. It was a big mess, and the NCAA is just, it's almost pointless to say it, but they're just what little bit of credibility they had, they've managed to completely squander with stuff like this and stuff like Miami. Also, you've got the trial last week, which we haven't even touched on, the ongoing Ed O'Bannon case that has wrapped up. But when the NCAA described itself as a cartel and tried to use that as a term of endearment, we're a cartel that does good things for players. And despite the fact they didn't get one former athlete to go up there and talk about all the great things the NCAA did for them, it's just they've really blundered things, and how they handle this will be intriguing. We've talked about this before. Pro and Korn was here, and he brought up the point, and I think it's legitimate. How much of a role does ESPN factor into this thing? Because we all know ESPN is a big player with the ACC, with college athletics now, with college basketball and football specifically. This impacts their product, their brand, their bottom line, because if North Carolina basketball is not in the NCAA tournament, that's not good for basketball. It's not. I mean, selfishly, it's not good. I mean, I like North Carolina when I'm filling out my NCAA tournament bracket. I like to either pick them to lose early. I mean, they're one of those teams that you tune them in, like Duke or UCLA or Kentucky or Indiana. You tune those teams in to either root for them or root against them.
Yeah, and I think a big key is the fact that North Carolina also, in tandem with Duke, they have that big presentation twice a year of the rivalry game with North Carolina. But, it's interesting, when you look at the product of the ACC now and the expanded ACC, which is obviously a wing of the Big East, I'm not so certain that in the fans' eye, and I'm talking about the fan that's 30 and under, if North Carolina's brand has not been watered down to a lot of fans younger, 35 or below, because they say, well, y'all got the Big East in here now, and so it'll be interesting to see how they handle it. But you're right. I think ESPN will have a handle in how it's reported and how it's handled, because this is going to be very interesting how one of these sacred cows, we're not going to put it in the category of what happened to Penn State. That was totally a different call.
Yeah, I mean, that's in a category by itself.
But still, when you have sacred cows involved, I remember the big stink after Southern California got slapped, and of course they've had probes at Notre Dame to uncover some things that have stopped short of getting Notre Dame in trouble. So it'd be interesting to see how this one's handled.
All right, shifting gears back over to football, Steve Spurrier did a intrigue. Anytime Steve Spurrier talks, he's going to say something that is relatively intriguing, and that was the case when he talked to Josh Kendall of the state newspaper, Gamecock beat writer. And one of the things that stuck out to me among the many, and you should go check out the story, it was in the paper, it's also at gogamecocks.com, but he was asked this question: the past 3 years, you have won 11 games, but you haven't been back to Atlanta for the SEC championship game since 2010. Are you beginning to get a little itch about that, or is that just the way it falls? And essentially he said, that's just the way it falls. And then he said this, quoting Spurrier. I thought this was interesting. Here's a quote from Spurrier, and I'm interested to see how Gamecock fans react to this. There's more to life than the SEC championship. I would say that's the biggest goal we could reach right there. But total wins, where you rank, the state championship, bowl victories, winning that bowl game just makes life so much pleasant until you play again. If in sports, we are all as good as our last game. If you win that bowl game, the fans, the team, it gives you a good feeling heading into the off season. We've been able to do that the last 3 years. Go 11-2, win the state championship. We've had a lot to brag about, but not the SEC. We're still going to try to win the SEC, that's for sure, and hopefully real soon. But Steve Spurrier is saying there's more to life than an SEC championship. That doesn't sound like the Steve Spurrier a la 1997 Florida Gator Steve Spurrier.
That sounds like the about to turn 70.
It may have, may not. But, I mean, Gamecock fans, are they going to be satisfied if you keep winning 11 games every year and keep beating Clemson? Is that enough, or is there going to reach a point where they go, no, that's not enough?
That would satisfy them because it keeps Spurrier employed here. I think once he wins the SEC, he's going to ride off into the sunset.
He did talk about going out on top in that interview.
The only one in here? Yep. You military? Nope. NFL. NFL? Yes, sir. You're under arrest. Step out, please.
I guess Klein didn't do him any favors. Jeez. You actually have recruiting? Oh, okay. Stand by.
Corn's on a cruise, but recruiting never cruises. We've got a couple of notes that we'll pass along here momentarily, but wanted to update this bizarre story, and it is a bizarre story. It was bizarre from the beginning when we got word that former Greenwood High standout Sam Montgomery was pulled over last week for going 89 and a 55. No big deal. I mean, speeding tickets happen. Jadeveon Clowney got a couple very popular, highly publicized speeding tickets, but he never went to jail, but he never got pulled over in Lawrence County. 89 and a 55. Sam Montgomery was sent to jail under what the state troopers said was discretion. And under the law in the state of South Carolina, you can go to jail for speeding if the officer just decides he wants to process you and spend the money to book you and send you to jail. for speeding, and that's what happened here. That officer was later suspended without pay, and I think we're finding out why now. The dash cam video was requested and released via the Freedom of Information, WSPA, the AP, a lot of people reporting on this. Here's a little clip of the dash cam video where you hear the officer figure out that Sam Montgomery was not only speeding but as an NFL player, and that's when it sounds like he decided to take him to jail.
The only one in here? Yep. You military?
Nope.
NFL? Yes, sir. You're under arrest. Step out, please.
NFL? Yes, sir. Step out. You're going to arrest. You're under arrest. That's crazy. That's just like driving while being an NFL player. You're going to jail. Later in that dash cam video, by the way, according to the WSPA report, and we watched this before the show, he gets out of the car. And Sam Montgomery, to his credit, was very respectful and never lost his cool the whole time. You heard him say, no, I'm not military, NFL, yes, sir. Later, after he was getting processed and being placed under arrest, he was outside of the car, and the trooper said, "Do not move. Look away from me. Look away. Look away. Keep your feet together, sir. If you cannot follow my commands, the next thing you're going to get is a taser. Spread your feet." Goodness gracious. This is Lance Corporal R.S. Salter, who was making the arrest and now suspended without pay, and I think we're beginning to see why. Speeding while playing in the NFL.
Well, next time you're in Lawrence, if you're an NFL player, you military? Yes. I'm military.
Good. I mean,
NFL, no.
I saw this. I mean, it was 89 and a 55, and he went to jail. It's like there has to be something else to it. I thought maybe the officer, maybe he was belligerent. Talk back to the officer. Maybe they found something that just wasn't reported initially. You don't know. Now, Sam Montgomery had some problems. He's drafted. Went to, of course, LSU from Greenwood. Was left early. Went to the NFL with the Texans, but was cut in the middle of the season abruptly. And the Texans dropped the word that he was into the marijuana. Now Montgomery and his agent denied that. He went to Oakland, was signed with the Raiders on the practice squad cut. Now he's with the Cincinnati Bengals. He's still got some work to do to make the team. And these kind of things, even when he didn't do anything wrong, it's bad in the NFL when you're trying to make a team and you have a history already. But at least by looking at that dash cam video, he doesn't look like he did anything wrong other than speeding. And I hope they got that on dash cam video, because anything this officer's claiming at this point, just like living up to every bad stereotype you possibly could.
Well, I will say this to people out there who've ever been pulled over or stopped. One of the things you got to be careful of is when the officer who pulls you over seems to be afraid. He probably saw Sam Montgomery, saw his size, and said, you know what, this guy could hurt me. And so you put on the front that you're tough because you're actually scared. And that's when you can get injured if you're a Joe citizen and the officer seems to be, intimidated by your size or whatever. And so you got to watch out, because it was good he acted in the way he did, because he could have gotten, as you say, tasered or even worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Let's say he loses his cool when he realizes, man, I'm being placed under arrest for speeding. And, yeah, he gets a little saucy with his attitude, and then he gets tasered, and then it's resisting arrest. And that's why you're glad these dash cam videos are there for not only, the police officer's safety, which is important. And these guys have a tough job, and it's what's bad about it is this makes it even worse. It makes people not trust law enforcement even worse. And by and large, most of them do a great job, 99.9% of them. But it sounds like Sam Montgomery may have been pulled over by the 1% right there. And it appears that his superiors must believe the same thing, considering he is now suspended without pay. His wife talked to WSPA and said he didn't know he was an NFL player. He never knew. Well, that tape makes it pretty clear. You're an NFL player? Yes, sir. Get out of the car. You're going to jail.
Oh, you play for Pac-Man's team. Get out of the car. Play with Malaluga, huh? Get out. I got to keep that clip. That's incredible. All right, gentlemen, stand by.
Yeah, I mean, shouldn't you wait and find out what team he plays for before you take him to jail? I mean, if he was Cowboys, okay, get out of the car. You're going to jail.
I'm telling you, it's the Cincinnati Bengal connection.
Yeah, but he didn't know he was playing for the Bengals. And like, who do you play for? Cincinnati Bengals. Get out of the car. You're under arrest. Then you can wrap your brain around and go, okay, well, now if like it was you played for the Raiders, okay, get out of the car. You're under arrest.
Well, what team would he not have gone to jail for playing for?
Jacksonville Jaguars.
The Patriots. Yeah, the Patriots.
Jacksonville Jaguars. In the NFL.
Go on. You play for the Jags. We're sorry.
You've suffered enough.
Yeah,
the Panthers.
There's no prison we can put you into worse than that.
The Panthers.
All right, let's drop a couple of recruiting notes in for you. Kornblut sent me these in the wee hours of the morning before he hopped on the SS Korntanic for his cruise vacation this week. Linebacker Javani Simmons out of Virginia Beach, Virginia, released a top 10 over the weekend. I love top 10s. I'll tell you what. In no order, he trimmed it from 21 to 10, and this is news. In no order, his final 10 schools are Clemson, Alabama, Georgia Tech, Miami, NC State, Ohio State, Oregon, Tennessee, Virginia, and Wisconsin. Last season, Simmons had 127 tackles, 17 tackles for a loss, 4 forced fumbles, 4 interceptions, and 2 sacks. His only recent visit was to Virginia in March for a junior day. And Boiling Springs quarterback Daniel Thompson, younger brother of Gamecock quarterback Dylan Thompson, picked up his first offer. He said, I'm striking while the iron's hot. Got that offer from Elon, has committed to Elon. So there you go. Couple of recruiting notes.
The Phoenix of Elon.
The Phoenix rising with a Thompson. And, so Dylan Thompson's younger brother, Daniel Thompson. There are a lot of Gamecock quarterback duos, or brother duos. You had Jabo Shaw at Georgia Southern, was a very good quarterback at Georgia Southern. He was the better Shaw quarterback in high school. He had Connor Shaw playing wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
So Jabo, one of my favorite. I could just say that over and over. Jabo Shaw had a big career at Georgia Southern. So Elon's hoping that Daniel Thompson has a big career for them. And I think we are caught up on all the major things that I want to pass along. That's how you do a show on a Monday. You get everything in there that you wanted to pass along. You had a couple things, Rickson, that you were mentioning. Anything of major note that we need to let the Sports Talk listener know about before we say goodbye?
Had a few things for Gamecock turned Cleveland Browns fans, and I guess for Johnny football fans too. Brian Hoyer, who's their starting quarterback, he's in his second year of a 2-year deal, and his agent has come out and said that they're working on an extension, but it would be, quote, very difficult to get that done, and that they're willing to wait and see what happens. So you might see, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, if Brian Hoyer's not satisfied with what Cleveland's offering, you might see a Johnny Football, Connor Shaw quarterback battle in Cleveland.
And if old Johnny Football doesn't tone it down a little bit, they're already getting tired of some of his shenanigans. And he's saying, hey, I'm not changing. I am who I am.
And Hoyer's a Cleveland kid. Played high school football in Cleveland, and that makes you a god in Cleveland. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle it if Johnny Football does win.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow. I believe we can win. Isn't that what we're supposed to say for the United States men's national team? It's a little hokey. But we'll see if they can win tomorrow. We'll be back. Sports Talk, same time, same place.